Sara, would you like to ask some of your questions?
Sure. So I was thinking we could just kind of talk about like the recent primary that just happened, and I was curious if you guys voted in the recent primary, and if you like had any challenges with voting, if you did vote.
Well, you hear things of a lot of people not getting their mail-in ballots, a lot of missing votes, and generally things kind of a mess.
Right.
Possibly deliberate voter expulsion.
Did your vote get lost in the mail?
Yep.
Oh, it did? Were you able to find like another way to vote or get your ballot?
Yeah, it was kind of last minute, but I did keep a track on the primaries. It's really nice to have the option in order to be able to mail in your votes. But a lot of things can also get lost along the way. Although that kind of applies even with things on person as well.
Do y'all follow local politics?
I follow some local politics, but that's something that we all kind of need to start doing more in general, is start voting from the ground up, from our representatives in order to hold initiatives. So more than just our mayors and our governors, presidents, obviously, House of Representatives.
Yeah, I think I've only more recently become aware of like how important like the more local elections are. And so I am trying to like be better about kind of researching beforehand or finding out information on those candidates. So sometimes it can be like overwhelming because there'll be like so many more candidates for those elections than like just the president or something like that.
Very, very true. And even with all the presidential candidates, nobody really pays attention to anyone but the primary ones because it's so overwhelming.
Right.
It can be a hard habit to unlearn.
What is your like guys' personal interest level in politics?
Well, I guess I'd like to put it on a scale in terms of a regular person who doesn't really look at all. I'd say in the middle higher range. I don't always pay as attention to as local as I should, but I still look at major initiatives and representatives and try my best to remember the names because I'm not always the best at remembering names.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of similar. Like, I'm not always like the first one to like kind of seek out that information, but I am trying to be like more aware of it.
Yeah, I know. Well, I already said like my housemates are people that I look to for voting information, and I think like political information in general. Like among the group of us, I trust that we've like learned some different things about like various topics, and like rely on that group to inform me. And so I've definitely like become closer and like more personally involved in the last few years.
Do you two remember your reactions in school when you learned about the Electoral College?
Honestly, I don't know if I really even remember.
I remember learning about the Electoral College and feeling like pretty confused. And honestly, like I still feel kind of confused about it. I'm like, this is so weird. And like watching election results come in when I was younger with my parents and being like what? Like what? Why is everything jumping around like this? And it just like, it means that it's like the ability for like the average person to like look at the numbers and understand what's happening and like be able to like kind of predict or know what's going on is like much more confusing.
I don't think because it becomes an unnecessary game of numbers instead of the nation's general interest. In a school, when they said that the electing founders didn't trust the voters to be smart enough to know who to vote for, it's like, seriously, we're that dumb?
Yeah, I guess that was kind of like one of my other questions was how confident are you that the results of an election will represent the will of the people?
Well, look at what happened with the last election.
Right. Yeah, I guess with the Electoral College, it doesn't really, if the popular vote can be different than who gets elected. But it has been interesting, like for this kind of show, I like started doing some research on like the suffrage movement, and it was kind of eye-opening to like learn some more of the history. And I think I always just kind of like took it for granted. But also I learned one of the ways that women really kind of started getting more aggressive and vocal about it was because white women didn't want Black men to be able to vote before they could. And so that was like pretty interesting, like discovering kind of a lot of the underlying racism that was part of the suffrage movement.
Yay, the power of racism has the power to change the world.
Right, that is really like upsetting because it's like, yeah, that definitely had a factor in like making that happen then. Yeah, I think the erasing people from history is obviously taking away people's voice, and that like something people are starting to do more is like bring attention to that and like call for recognizing history and like recognizing like people of color being on the forefront of these like movements of change.
I mean, that's kind of another thing about voting. They just don't make it that, they need to make it simpler. And of course, certain groups of people are discouraged from voting. And these are the reasons why I get really irritated about how self-righteous people are about people who don't vote. It's not as simple as you always seem to think it is. And who cares if you vote to take away our rights? And if there's no one you want to vote for, then that's another thing.
How do y'all handle that like psychologically, like when it feels like the process of voting itself and like the choices that we get are frustrating?
There's a reason why millennials and Zoomers are known for being pessimistic.
We just sink into
Sometimes that's how to turn off the TV.
Do you find that kind of like voter swag, does that like influence you guys, like seeing all those posters or getting mail?
That does go to prove how fickle the voter base can be sometimes, though.
I think the times that like canvassers have come and knocked on my door, or the candidate themselves have come, that feels like good to me, I think, and feels different than like, a lot of mail, for example.
Yeah.
Cool. Should we show off our ears?
Yeah.